Hey there! Today I'm going to be talking all about my favorite knitting tools, from my preferred needle sets to my yarn ball winder and Swift, project bags, and those little things that just elevate my knitting practice that much more. Grab your craft of choice, settle in, and let's get started. I have a lot to cover today, but I wanted to quickly talk about how I'm going to be organizing this video. I wanted to make sure that things were divided up into what I consider essentials and then things that are just also nice to have. So I have some chapters in this video and you can jump on ahead if you're only interested in one or the other. I also just wanted to give a quick caveat that these things are all just my personal opinions and preferences based on the things I've tried. Everyone's preferences are going to be a little bit different, and that's totally okay. And obviously I haven't tried every single tool or resource out there, so this is just what I know based on what I've tried. All of the things I'm going to be talking about today were either bought with my own money or are something that I maybe put on a wish list for my birthday or Christmas that may have been gifted to me by friends or family. So all the opinions I'm sharing today are just coming from me. As always, I know that everyone's budget and ability is different, and that's okay. For me personally, these things have been collected over the last 6 years pretty slowly. A lot of the things I have purchased once and that's it, but there are a few instances where I decided to upgrade my version of it. In those cases, I am going to talk about the version that I started with that might be a little bit more accessible to you depending on your budget, or if you're just kind of getting into these crafts and just want kind of a lower stakes option. So now that all that's been said, let's go ahead and get into what I consider to be knitting essentials. First up is needles. If you are just getting started with knitting, I highly recommend taking some time to try out the different kinds of materials that knitting needles can be made out of. Some local yarn shops have some displays where you can kind of test out different things before you invest. You can also just start out buying fixed circular needles. Those are really flexible in terms of what they can do, the kinds of projects they can do, and pretty affordable to just like try out different types. Personally, for me, I discovered that my favorite knitting needle is the Chiaogoo red lace, which is a stainless steel needle. And I really love these because they're very pointy, very easy to get into my stitches, and they're super lightweight. And also the stainless steel is like a really good balance between being slippery and having a little bit of grip still. So I really like these. And also the cord is just like incredible, unmatched. It's like, doesn't kink, it doesn't get caught. It's just like amazing. So these are my favorite needles. But when I got into knitting and decided that I was ready to invest in an interchangeable set, I was not prepared to invest in the Chiaogoos. The interchangeable set for these is a little bit more expensive. And so I actually started out with a Knit Picks interchangeable set. I think I invested in these maybe like 6 months into my knitting practice. If you're going to keep knitting and you know that this is something you want to keep doing, an interchangeable set can save you some money in the long run of things. And this Knit Picks one was a decent price at the time I bought it. I also bought this case. This is a separate purchase, but I really love this case. Actually, I like it better than the one I'm using now. But I have my normal set here. This is the nickel-plated interchangeable set from Knit Picks. These are like the standard needles, and then in this side, you can't see them, but I have the short set of needles as well for interchangeables. And the short set is specifically so that you can do 16-inch circumferences for things like sleeves or hats. The only con that I have found to the Knit Picks needles is that the interchangeable sets only go down to a size US 4. They might have like smaller needles in a separate set, but I don't have that. So to fill the gaps in my collection, for example, when I'm working on summer knits, a lot of those things are knit on smaller needles. I would just go ahead and buy some singles of Chiaogoo red lace, just some fixed needles for whatever I needed for that project. And because summer knits are mostly knit on smaller needles, I'd spend several months working with these guys and just really fall in love with them. And then come fall, it was time to pull out my interchangeable set again, and it was always just kind of a bummer. I liked the Chiaogoo ones so much more. These are fine. There's nothing wrong with them, but the Chiaogoo ones were my favorite. And so last year I decided that I was ready to invest in a Chiaogoo interchangeable set. I decided like knitting is something that I have been doing for the last 6 years very, very regularly, like nonstop. And I knew that knitting was going to be something that I continued to do for many, many years. And I knew that I was ready to invest and have a needle set that I absolutely love. So I was prepared to invest in the Chiaogoo interchangeable set at that point and kind of give myself a little birthday Christmas combo present. My birthday's in December, but I actually didn't need to because my parents were kind enough to get this for me for my birthday and Christmas last year, and I absolutely love this set. I will say the case on the Knit Picks one, I definitely prefer a lot more. But these needles are just incredible. It has a wider range of sizes from US 2 or 2.75 millimeter needle all the way up to US 15 or 10 millimeter, which is smaller and larger than the Knit Pick set that I have. And yeah, these are just great needles. I love them so much. I did go ahead and ask for the 4-inch needle, which I was a little bit nervous about because I think I would actually prefer the 5-inch length of interchangeable. Just maybe it would be a little bit more comfortable for me to hold long term, you know, like that, if it was a bit longer. But I ended up asking for the 4-inch because this version can do a 16-inch circumference, which I use all the time. And I didn't want to have to buy another interchangeable set to be able to do that or have to buy more fixed needles. So I ended up asking for the 4-inch, and I'm actually really glad that I did because it is still pretty comfortable to like hold in my hand and like my pinky's not falling off the end. So that's really nice. And I can do 16-inch circumferences on this, and I can also just add longer cables to it and make it as long as I want it. So I think that that was a really good choice. And yeah, it's still nice and comfortable for me. This is just like an incredible set, and if you're prepared to invest and you know that you like Chiaogoo red lice, I would recommend trying them out in fixed form first. But this has just been an awesome thing to add to my collection. They're my default needles, and these are now like my backups. If I'm running out of any kind of needles, I'll use those still, but this is definitely my default, and I absolutely love this set. The other thing that is like 100% essential in knitting is obviously yarn. But that is such a broad topic that I'm not going to dive into that today. If that's a video you're interested in hearing about my favorite yarns, definitely let me know in the comments and I can record one of those too. And then there's also just a few notions that I would consider essential to knitting. Scissors, a tapestry needle, a tape measure, and some stitch markers. These are the things that are pretty generic and you could buy from a lot of different places. So please consider shopping small, your local yarn stores, local craft stores, small businesses near you. I'm just going to talk kind of generically about the things that I have found helpful in these things. So for scissors, the number one thing that I like in a scissor is that it's small, it can be packed away, it's decently sharp, and also that it doesn't have like a super pointy end that's going to poke me, poke my knitting, dig a hole in my bag or anything like that. So I have a couple different scissors that I use. These ones are from Merchant and Mills. I haven't been able to find them in a long time, so I'm not sure if they still make them. But it has this like safety edge that's kind of rounded at the bottom of the scissors, which is great. And then I also have these, which are actually like collapsible. You can kind of pull them apart and then turn them into scissors like that. And so that also works as well. I do think that these ones are a bit sharper, but I've had these for longer, so maybe they've just dulled over time and I need to resharpen them. But both are great. I think these are just great options as long as they fit that criteria for me, being sharp, not pointy, and small, they do the job. Next is tapestry needles. These tapestry needles from Clover are my favorite. They have this little kick out at the end that makes it really easy to get into my stitches, and just like a nice, obviously big head where I can put my yarn through easily. Like I said, these ones are from Clover and they come in a nice pack of 2. They're pretty affordable. I got these from my local yarn store, a set of 2 for $3. Which that's kind of blocking the logo, but it's just like a little Clover set of tapestry needles, and these are my favorite. They work great. Then I also have tape measures in each of my project bags. I personally like the ones that are retractable with a button. It just makes it really easy to store. They don't get tangled. They don't get caught on things. I do know that fabric tape measures can stretch over time. Personally, I haven't had any problems with this. I try and compare it against a like standard stainless steel ruler that I have like every year, or if I'm concerned, if I'm seeing a pattern of things maybe not lining up, I'll go ahead and check in the middle of the year as well. But I haven't had any problems and they work fine. I just know that this might be something that I need to replace every few years. I don't know. I've had this, I think, for maybe 3 or 4 years now, and it's been fine. So a tape measure is just a really great thing to have. Again, your local yarn store will probably have these in stock. And then last but not least, stitch markers are going to be something that you have in your stash. I have 2 different kinds. The first is these just like solid rings. I use these for my beginning of round markers primarily. And then I also have these light bulb safety pin style markers, and I use these for everything else, for marking raglan stitches, for marking decrease rounds or anything like that. And these 2 combined are really everything that I need. When you're shopping for stitch markers, I will say that you can get them for a lot cheaper if you use different search terms other than stitch markers. These solid round rings I actually got from my local craft store in the jewelry section. These are also known as jump rings. That's a term that you can search for. The only thing you want to keep in mind with these is that you want to get a diameter size that is going to work for you on your largest needle that you commonly use. I think these are 10 or 11 millimeter jump rings that I got, and they have been able to work for me on every single size needle that I have used. So yeah, that's the only thing to keep in mind there. I want to say I got a pack of like 100 for like a couple bucks. It was really cheap. And then for these light bulb stitch markers, retail stores use these a lot. You can also find them, I'm sure, in your local craft stores as well. But if you search for bulb pins or light bulb pins, you can typically find a big pack of them for much cheaper than you would if they were sold as stitch markers. So that's just something to keep in mind as well. I bought a set of each of these once many, many years ago, and they have lasted me forever. I still have a million in my stash. And it's not a problem if some break or I lose a couple over the years. I still have absolutely plenty, and I think that these will last me for decades. So that is everything that I would consider a knitting essential, the things that you pretty much need in order to knit. But now let's go ahead and get into the things that I consider just nice to have. First up is my yarn ball winder and my Swift. These things are technically not essential, but personally I invested in versions of these immediately as soon as I started using yarn wound in hanks. And I don't regret that decision at all. It saves you so much time. If you are manually winding your yarn hanks by hand, and you have the ability to buy a yarn ball winder and Swift, I highly recommend. It saves so much time, so much energy, and allows you to get back to actually knitting much, much faster. Currently, I use a yarn ball winder and Swift from Stanwood Needlecraft, and I absolutely love those, and I'll talk about them in a second. But I didn't start that way. I actually started with the Knit Picks ball winder and then just like a cheap metal Swift that I found online. And both of those things served me for many years. There was technically nothing wrong with them, but I felt similar to my knitting needles that I was ready to upgrade a little bit. So I since rehomed those. Both that yarn ball winder and Swift are still loved and used very regularly. And if you're looking to just like dip your toe in and not spend a ton of money on these things, those are great options. But now I have the Stanwood ball winder and Swift. I love these so much. Specifically, the ball winder is incredible. You clamp it onto your table here, and then you spin it like this, and both the cone in the middle and the arm around spin at the same time. This thing is so satisfying to crank. It's so nice. And the reason why I was really interested in this version is that all the parts are available for sale separately, which is great. If anything breaks on this, I can just buy the part and replace it. And this thing should last me for the rest of my life, which I was really interested in. It's also just like a beautiful object. I feel like both the ball winder and the Swift are. And my craft spaces have been kind of tied to our main living space in the last few homes we've had. And so I kind of selfishly wanted something that was a little bit prettier and didn't have as much visual clutter as my old versions. My old version was like gray and purple and then like bright blue. And I just wanted something that felt a little bit more natural and blended in a little bit better. So these served really well. This ball winder winds yarn so quickly. I absolutely love it. And then the Swift is just like a really nice, simple wooden Swift. I do think that compared to the old metal Swift I had, this one is a little bit trickier to like lift up. It just doesn't want to go up quite as easy. It's not really a problem. It's just something I've noticed. But it absolutely fits the bill in terms of being just like a nice object that I can leave out in my craft space and it doesn't draw too much attention to myself. In fact, I think it's quite beautiful. So both of these things have been really lovely in my craft space and work and do the job perfectly well. But truly, regardless of what version of a yarn ball winder and Swift you purchase, if you have the means to do so, I highly, highly recommend. They're just really incredible tools to add to your craft space and really save you so much time. Next, I want to talk about blocking mats and pins. I think some people would probably say these are pretty essential. I kind of disagree. I didn't buy these maybe for the first 3 or 4 years of my knitting practice, and I was totally fine. I think I finally decided to invest when I was knitting cables and lace more frequently. But I went ahead and got these mats. These came in a set of 9. They're no longer made by this company anymore, but there's a ton of other companies that make these. I know Coco Knits has some. Knitter's Pride has some. There's going to be a million that all pretty much do the same thing. I would say for these, I would recommend actually buying blocking mats and using that search term. I have seen some horror stories online of people using like their children's play mats or like garage mats and then some color transferring from the mats to their knitting, and that terrifies me. So I went ahead and like actually bought actual blocking mats from a yarn company, and they've served me really well. They're just like a nice foam mat. And then I have these pins from Knitter's Pride that are really nice. I specifically chose these versions because they have a lot of pins with kind of this plastic gripper on top, which makes it really easy to like put in and take out. They also come in a couple different sizes. There's these smaller ones too. But it makes it really easy to put in and take out of your mat, and also just make it really easy to not misplace any pins on accident. If you're just using individual T-pins, you can get a little bit more control, I think, but it's really easy to lose those. And I have a dog that eats things he shouldn't, and so I was not interested in having loose T-pins potentially fall over the place. So I got these and they work great. They do everything I need them to do. I don't always pin things when I lay them flat to dry on my blocking mats. It just depends on the project. But these are a nice to have tool in your collection. Now let's talk about project bags. Honestly, I didn't really use project bags for the first handful of years I was knitting. I just kind of like set it on the couch next to me. And that's totally fine. There's nothing wrong with that. In those years when I did want to use a project bag, I often just like pulled the basic grocery tote, and that worked just fine too. So there's like no right or wrong way to have a project bag. You don't need to spend money specifically on project bags if you don't want to. Over the years, I have found a couple project bags that really suit my process and practice really well, so I figured I would just quickly talk about them. The first bag that I have kind of discovered works really well for me as a project bag are these beautiful art totes from the Tote Library. I actually got served an ad on social media for these, and I went to art school. I'm a designer, so like I'm a sucker for this right here. So I went ahead and bought one thinking it could be a project bag, but it also could just like be a normal tote bag. But I absolutely love these as knitting project bags for a few reasons. First, there is this little pocket in here. It's zipper, it's built in. That is wonderful for holding my notions, my scissors, my tape measure, my tapestry needle. It's nice and secure. It's right at the top. It's really easy to access. And it doesn't get tangled with my project. So that is like the number one biggest reason why I love these bags as project bags. Also, they're just like a really good size. They fit a whole sweater project and extra yarn, no problem at all. They have a nice zipper on top so that I can close it up if I want to. And I feel like things don't get caught on the zipper ever, even if I leave it open. So it's kind of a best of both worlds situation. Also, they have this kind of like string attachment here with this clip at the end that I think is designed to hold your keys, which you can always do. But actually, I use it sometimes to hold my scissors if I'm like out and about and like weaving in ends. It's like nice to have my scissors on something that I can really easily just grab. I don't use this all the time, but it's there. And then also the straps are just like a nice length to slip over my shoulder and carry around. I actually have 3 versions of these bags in different designs, and I use them all the time as different project bags. But I've also like rolled up one and put it in the other. And this is how I went to flock. One was my project bag, and then I had a spare bag that I could pull out and put my yarn purchases in and carry around 2 bags if I needed to. So that was really, really nice. While this is a small business, I think they're beautiful. They're great. I don't think you need to buy this specific bag if it's not like something you're interested in. But maybe you have a tote bag at home and a sewing machine and you can kind of create your own little built-in pouch. I think that that is a really good idea. Or maybe you have a bag at home that has a similar kind of built-in pouch that maybe you've never thought of using as a project bag, but that works really well. Maybe it just inspires some ideas for you. The other type of project bag that I have and use is just like a little pouch style bag. This is the medium pouch from Meka. I got this at Flock, and it's just like a nice little pouch guy that I use to hold my sock and hat projects. It's just really simple inside, just like a basic pouch, but it's well made. It's cute. It's another small business, so great to support them. And is really convenient for those littler accessory projects. This one is a lot easier to just like stick in my purse. If I'm not bringing a whole big project with me, but just want to take something little, this works great. And then last in the knitting section, there's just a few extra little tools and things that I've added to my stash that really help me kind of up level my practice. First is just a little kitchen scale. This one works great. It goes to the 100th of the gram, and it allows me to weigh out like leftover yarn quantities to see how many yards I have left of a certain ball after I'm done with a sweater. Or I use it a lot in spinning as well to weigh my fiber or my finished spun yarn. It's just a great little tool to have. Definitely not necessary, but can come in handy if you're trying to track yarn quantities. I also use an app on my phone called Knitting Chart. I'll pop it over on the screen over here so you can see what I'm looking at. But it's just a really great tool to help me keep track of any charts for any patterns I'm following. The one I have on the screen here is actually a custom design, so no worries about sharing too many pattern details for anything there. But you can easily like keep track of whatever row you're knitting on. This works for color work, for lace cables, everything. You can easily take an existing pattern and turn it into a chart like this. So you can have everything in one place, and it's just really, really nice. I did pay for this app. It was just like a one-time purchase, but you can get a free trial to see if it's something that you like using. For me, it's just been a really nice tool to have my charts really accessible for me wherever I'm at. And then last but not least, I have a pack of these little tags here that I use to label some stuff. I label all my swatches, the gauge, the yarn I used, all of that. I label my hand spun skeins with the fiber I used, the yardage. And then I also label any leftovers I have in my stash from past projects with how much yardage it is, what yarn it is, and what color it is. Just like a nice little thing to have to help you stay organized. That is all the knitting tools I have to share with you today. I hope you found this video helpful. Like I said, everyone's tastes and preferences and budgets are a little bit different. This is just my personal experience, and if it helps you out, great. I'll include some links to the more specific items, the larger items and things like that, so it's really easy for you to find. But like I said, for the more generic items like a tape measure or scissors or something like that, please consider supporting local businesses if you can. You can always come over and say hi to me on Instagram or Ravelry. My username is CaitCastsOn in both of those locations, and I will leave those linked in the description below. Thanks so much for sitting down and joining me today. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.